Welcome back to Frameworks. If you're feeling overwhelmed by what it takes to prioritize your health, this episode is for you. Today, I'm walking through 5 habits that are simple to understand, easy to implement, and backed by real results. These aren't hacks or trends. These are anchor habits that create a ripple effect across your movement, energy, digestion, mood, and your recovery. I'll show you how each one fits into a normal day and how they matter physiologically, practically, and personally. So now let's get into it. All right, guys. So today we are talking habits. And we've talked about this a lot. Me specifically, I created a course. Some of you guys may have watched this or consumed this course in our LearnerX platform. And this course is called The 7 Habits of Highly Healthy People. And that was in 2024, in which we created that. And the goal of today is to take some of those concepts and some of those ideas and to simplify it even more. So forgive me if you've already heard some of these. And to be quite frank, I'm not going to say anything today that is going to be mind-blowing. I just want to talk about the things that we know to be true and maybe give a little bit of advice on how to implement these things in our daily lives and actually create habits around these things that we know make such a big difference. So most people, and when I say most people, I'm talking about myself, I'm talking about you, the coach, I'm talking about your clients. If you're a general population person out there just listening to this podcast, I'm talking to you too. Most of us don't need more information. We just need to understand how to implement the things that are the quote unquote lowest hanging fruit for us. What are the things that are going to have the biggest impacts on our lives, on our health? Okay, so that's the concept of today. That's the goal of today, is to talk about 5 habits specifically that I believe are the lowest hanging fruit for most people looking to improve their health, their longevity, and doing this without overhauling or overwhelming their daily life. Okay, habit number 1, this is going to be overly new or nuanced to anyone, and it's just going to be, let's move our bodies more. Okay, so I'm going to get really specific here, and I'm going to recommend that we move our bodies for at least 10 minutes, specifically in walking post-meal. Okay, so I'm going to assume that most people are eating about 3 times per day. So as I talk through this, I'm going to go ahead with that assumption that this will include an additional 3 bouts of walking per day. Okay, so why is this important, or how can this be beneficial? Number 1, it promotes digestion. Okay, how does it promote digestion? It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is the system that we need activated to digest food effectively, or at least most effectively. Number 2, reduces blood glucose and insulin post-meal. And we're starting to see this a lot with people that are walking around with these little CGMs, or continuous glucose monitors, on the back of their arms, and we're noticing that, and this isn't a surprise, but it's cool that these people can actually see it on their cell phones and their apps. Blood sugar spikes are significantly lower when we move our bodies post-meal. And it doesn't matter what food a lot of people are eating. We're seeing this across the board. So, you could have some steak and some jasmine rice and some kale, right? Day 1, get back on Zoom, and you'll see like a 20-point spike in insulin or glucose, post-meal, versus if you have that exact same meal and then you go out for a walk, or you're just moving your body in some other way, not overly exerting, just moving some blood, we see a significant decrease in those glucose spikes. So reducing blood glucose and insulin post-meal is extremely beneficial. The next thing is that it adds 30 minutes of sun exposure per day. Most people are not getting enough sun. Most people are not exposing their eyeballs and their skin to the sun enough per day. So, hey, this is 2-3 birds with one stone. Okay, we're promoting digestion, we're getting in some extra movement, and we're exposing ourselves to the sun. Okay, bonus, we'll talk about hydration in a minute, but bring a water bottle with you. And because you're out here in Arizona in the summer heat, you're going to drink more water as you go out on that walk. Okay. And then finally, it's going to increase total daily energy expenditure. Okay. So, and it's going to do that without additional stress on the joints or without something additional to recover from. So from a coach's lens, this is low skill, it's low impact, it's a universal habit that you can just prescribe to anyone. Like telling people to walk for 30 plus minutes additionally per day is not going to hinder them. So it is a universal habit that we can all adopt. Okay. And we can anchor post-meal walk as a non-negotiable in programming. Okay, so we're so used to saying A1, we're doing a front squat, and A2, we're doing a weighted pull up, and B1, and so on and so forth. And we're so excited, and we high five when our clients are compliant to that. Wrap your brain around plugging this in as a non-negotiable in their program design. And that's why in Coach RX, we thought it was extremely important to really champion this idea of prescribing lifestyle just as if we were going to prescribe exercise. All right, this next habit is one that I think anyone can resonate with, and it is to hydrate with intention. Okay, so again, getting really specific with the tactic. And, I'm not going to get too much into morning routines, but this is one thing that I've recommended for over a decade as a morning routine, and it's starting your day. The very first thing that you consume before coffee, before food, before anything, start your day with 12 to 16 ounces of water, plus some sea salt, plus the juice of a half a lemon. Okay. Extremely beneficial. And it's just a great way to start your day. Okay. And we'll talk about hydration goals here in a minute. But hey, we're knocking out a good portion of that as we start the day. Why is this important in my opinion? I think it's really important to rehydrate after 7 to 9 hours of fluid loss. When we sleep, we lose fluid. Even if you don't sweat a ton while you sleep, you are still losing fluid while you sleep. Okay, the sodium in this concoction supports cellular hydration and adrenal health. And the lemon adds potassium and digestive support, and it can also stimulate bile production. So I think that is just extremely low-hanging fruit, and it's so easy to do. Okay, if you want to upgrade this prescription and you're prescribing like 5 or 10 grams of creatine per day, go ahead and throw that in here as well. And you are just ensuring that your client or maybe yourself is just building this in as your morning routine, as a habit, as the first thing that you're consuming every single day. As I drink my water. So when we start to talk about goals here, something that we've been recommending for many, many years here at OPEX is we take your body weight in pounds and we divide that by 2, and then we're drinking that many ounces per day. So if you're a 200-pound guy and and half of that of course is 100 pounds, you're going to have 100 ounces of water every single day. Okay. If you're sweating a bunch, if you live in a climate like we do here in the desert, maybe add about 10% to that. Okay. So, minimal, we want to be at that 50% of body weight in ounces per day. Okay. So from a coach's lens, we can also create hydration cues. Okay. So it's one thing to say, hey, Sally, I need you to drink 75 ounces of water every single day and go. Okay. Maybe help Sally out with, maybe start your day with 12 or 16 ounces of water, put these things in here. Maybe it's cues around, having a bottle at your side at all times, right? Maybe it's asking Sally, what her typical water bottle is in terms of total ounces and just calculating that for her and just saying, hey, Sally, outside of the 16 ounces of water that we're drinking in the morning, I need you to drink 2 of those 32-ounce Yeti water bottles or whatever Sally is carrying. Okay. So just creating some hydration cues and getting really specific around how they can do that in execution. And then finally, educate on the compounding effect of dehydration on energy, cravings, cognition. We talk about this concept and idea of linking, right? We have to understand their goals, what is really important to them, and then go back and connect why hydration or how hydration can improve whatever your client's goals are. So if work is really, really important, maybe hit that cognition piece. If they're on this fat loss journey and they're trying to lose some fat, maybe hit the cravings piece. If they're like, hey, at 2:00, I just feel terrible, maybe hit the energy piece. So educate that client or your client on the compounding effects of dehydration and why they ought to hydrate. All right, this next framework is a really big one, and I needed to get this in because it's so important. This can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So bear with me. I'm going to get pretty specific here on just a couple points, but there's a lot that falls into this framework. And this framework is creating rhythm through routine. Okay. So how do we do that? We just simply need to establish consistent AM, PM anchor points and create rhythms and routines off of those anchor points. Of course, the rhythms and routines that we need to set need to be good for us. So we're talking about healthy rhythms and routines. So we're not talking about like wind down with a glass of wine every night. That could actually take you back for most of us. But talking about the importance of this, okay? So routine aligns with our circadian biology, okay? So our bodies want to know what they're doing at what time throughout the day, okay? Predictability supports habit formation and stress regulation from an emotional standpoint, right? So creating rhythm through routine helps the client and their mindset in terms of habit formation and not having to think about what they're doing at 9 o'clock to wind down. It's just, hey, this is what I do. I'm creating this as a habit, but it also aligns with that circadian biology. So two really important parts from a physiological standpoint, as well from an emotional standpoint as well with your client. When we start to think about what sits in here, we can start talking about ideal daily cadences. And again, this gets really, really personal. So make sure that you're not just slapping, these random habits on people and just saying, you need to do this. But think about it principally, right? Think about this as a framework, and then take this framework and individualize this framework with your people or with yourself. Okay. Number one, wake and sleep at the same time. Okay. Super, super important that we wake up and go to sleep at the same time. For some of us that might go to bed a little bit later on the weekends, whether it's activities, whether it's time with friends, whether it's a late dinner and a movie, whatever the case is, what I'm going to recommend is that you fight to wake up at the same time, even if that means that you get 30 or 60 minutes less sleep. There's some really good evidence around the concept and idea of just waking up every day at the same time and building habits around that. Obviously, we want to go to sleep at the same time as well on a nightly basis, but sometimes life just happens, okay? So number one, wake and sleep at the same time. Number two, this connects to our previous habit, which is moving daily. So make sure that we're getting those walks in, make sure that we're doing easy zone one work on a daily basis, but also let's lift some weights, right? And let's do some aerobic work as well. So we want to challenge our muscles. We want to give our muscles something to adapt to, and we want to challenge our cardiovascular system as well in aerobics. Number three, eat at regular intervals and finish meals 2 to 3 hours prior to bed. Okay, so remember, we want to build habits around our daily life as well as our food. And there's some really good stuff that comes along with building really good habits and routine around food, and how that kind of leaks into the ability to digest food a little bit more effectively. Okay, so eating at a regular time, eating at regular intervals, and finishing meals 2 to 3 hours prior to bed. Rule of thumb that I always tell my people, it's always really good to go to bed a little bit hungry. If we're going to bed full, we know that our body's trying to digest. And when we're trying to digest and sleep at the same time, those things mix like oil and water, okay? The next piece is winding down, okay? I'm not going to go too deep into this. I think there's enough resources out there. I think we all know really good principles, but in case we don't, we want to make sure that we wind down from light exposure, from stimuli, body temperature. We want body temperature to be low, and we want to create really good habits that work well for us. Okay, so I don't want to throw on a bunch of very specific pieces in terms of tactics, because there might be some tactics that work for me that don't work awesome for you. So principally, what puts you in a restful state? Figure out what that is for you and include that in your nighttime routine, as long as it doesn't include medicating yourself, of course. Next piece here is morning. Okay, so I could go deep here and I won't, okay, with the morning routine. But what I'll say principally, or as a framework, is to set your morning up for success, or set yourself up for success with your morning routine. Your morning routine cannot be overly complex, overly complicated. It can't take 6 hours for most of us that have things to do. So just make sure that you're doing things in the morning that set you up for success. Okay. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you drink your lemon water and your sea salt. You make your coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, maybe you're going on a quick walk. Maybe you have a prayer habit that you're doing. All of those things, whatever that is for you, that really sets you up for wins throughout the day. Create that or implement those things as a part of your morning routine, so that you're implementing healthy habits to kick off your day. Okay. And then from a coach's standpoint, how do we do this? Okay. So the easiest thing that we've always told coaches to do is to audit your client's routine. Okay, so how do you audit your client's routine? If you're in person with them, literally just go to the whiteboard and just write everything on that whiteboard from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep. So many good things are unveiled in that simple practice of just writing down exactly what they're doing. Sometimes you'll write down what they're doing on a whiteboard and you don't even have to say anything as their coach. They just point out like, oh my gosh, I'm only doing this, or I'm only doing that, or I'm doing this too little, or I'm doing that too much. So there's a lot of power in just writing that out on a whiteboard. If you're on Zoom, share your screen and type it out, right? Up to you. Routines reduce decision fatigue, and this is unbelievably key for adherence from a client standpoint. So, rule of thumb, insert one behavior at a time. And number two, try to build that as a routine. Okay. So when you insert a behavior or prescription and you're tracking that behavior or prescription, that is not yet a habit. That's an intentional action. So the goal would be to eventually turn that intentional action into a habit. How do you do that? You intentionally do it over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. I don't think we need to do, I don't think we need to wake up and drink sea salt and lemon water 10,000 times to build as a habit, but maybe we might need to do that for 30 days every single morning before we just kind of build that in our rhythm and our routine. Okay, now I'm going to go a little bit deeper into sleep, but not too deep. And that brings us to habit number 4, and it's prioritizing deep, high quality sleep. Okay, and I'm going to say that very specifically, deep and high quality sleep, because there is a difference between deep and light sleep or high quality and low quality sleep. So the tactic here is simple: sleep 7+ hours with a fixed bedtime and a fixed wake time, just like we talked about in creating nighttime routines or creating AM and PM habits. Okay, why does this work? Sleep affects hormone regulation, it affects tissue repair, it affects our cognition, it affects our immunity or how well we feel or how much we get sick. Everything is downstream of sleep. So when I talked about linking goals and priorities, this one is just so easy if we know how to do this effectively as a coach. Everyone's goals and priorities can be linked back to sleep. Okay, because we can't do anything effectively or as effectively as we could do it with great sleep if we're not getting great sleep. Okay, so low sleep equals higher cortisol, lower insulin sensitivity, and quite frankly, just worse performance. I'm not just talking about performance in the gym. I'm just talking about overall performance. So if performance is being a parent, being a great employee, being a great business owner, a coach, wherever the case is, if we're not getting great sleep, we are not living up to our potential in any one of those things. Okay, so just some environmental tips. We already talked about this before, but create those nighttime routines. Sleep in a cold, dark, screen-free room if possible. Pre-sleep wind down. So, read a book, pray, meditate, journal. Do whatever you have to do to kind of turn this thing off. A lot of people that have issues sleeping is because they can't turn this thing off. So you just need to create some really good practices to be able to turn your brain off. Okay, so from a coach's standpoint, frame sleep as a training input, not a recovery afterthought. Okay, so another way to say that is treat sleep as not a reaction to someone feeling bad, but as being proactive to getting them to reach their goals, or being proactive in performing as high as they possibly can, in the gym, out of the gym, and work, as a parent, all of those things that we talked about. Okay. One thing that I would ask is your sleep helping your training and your performance, or is it undoing it? And ask them that honestly and tell them to really think about that before they answer that question for you. A lot of people know that they're getting bad sleep if they are getting bad sleep. Some people think that they're getting bad sleep because they hear 8-9 hours a night and they're like, I'm only getting 7.5. So I think I'm getting bad sleep. So maybe they need some education around sleep and how sleep is extremely individualized, and we can't just throw like 8-9 hours on everyone and say, this is what you should get and you'll feel better, you'll feel great. Okay, so we need to connect back sleep and any prescription really to how it's going to help them right now and we need to create some kind of assessment mechanism. So if you have clients that are wearing like a wearable, right, maybe you leverage that wearable and that objective data to understand if they're getting really good sleep, restful sleep or not. But at the end of the day, there just needs to be a conversation around how sleep affects everything downstream. All right, this last habit, I'm going to start this off kind of being more principled, more, frameworky, but I do want to get specific here, okay? And this habit is just being more intentional in the things that we do, okay? So that could mean many things for many different people, but it's being more intentional and more mindful around what we do and why we do it. Okay, so I think this is extremely important. And as a coach, you know this, right? It's like, how you connect people to training and being adherent or compliant to their training program. You do it because you reverse engineer what your goals are. But let's do this with everything, and let's do it every single day as a habit in our lives, okay? In our fitness, and more important, out of our fitness. Okay, so take some daily time to reflect, to understand what goals are. Challenge your clients to do this, and don't get uncomfortable with this, even though this isn't, this might not be talking about, improving their back squat, 5RM or whatever the case is. Challenge your clients a little bit, and maybe this is going to be a challenge for you, but talk about life with your clients. Talk about what is the end game here. What can they be intentional around? Okay. What are their goals? Okay. In the gym, outside of the gym, all of those things, and challenge them to write those down. Challenge them to do weekly, monthly, quarterly check-ins. Heck, maybe do those with your clients and talk about what are goals outside of the gym. And I want to have conversations with you around those things. And I want to connect in holistically. And I want to talk about how what we're doing in fitness and training and talking about cognition and having great energy, how that needs to bleed out into the things that are really important to you in your daily life. So the tactic here would just be, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly time to reflect, to sit down and talk about what are my goals, what am I being intentional against. And maybe for some people, this isn't like hey, in a year I want to make this much money, or in a year I want to get this promotion at work, or so on and so forth. Maybe it's even more deeply rooted than that, right? Maybe it's around the type of person they want to be. Maybe it's around their faith and getting more connected into that, and living up to, their idea of what they want to be. So maybe it's professional, maybe it's fitness, maybe it's life, maybe it's faith specific. I don't know what it is, but talk to your clients about these things, and just be that sounding board for them and create this tactic around assessment. Okay. Why does this work? Okay. Whenever we're working towards something, we can check in with intentionality. Okay. It's really, really hard to assess if we're doing a great job or not if we don't know what we're going toward. And I definitely have been in this place a few times in my life where, I just was rolling with the punches and everything was quote unquote going great. But in my own brain, I didn't know what great really meant. So I know, again, this one is kind of like up in the air and not as specific as our other habits. But what I'm really trying to get to is being that sounding board for people and getting them to really think about these things. There's so many people, and you might be surprised, or maybe you won't be surprised around this, but there's so many people that I've asked this question to around like, what's your goal? What's your why? What's intentionality mean to you? If we had to reverse engineer our way to success, what would that be? And people were just like deer in the headlights, don't even know. But about 100% of the time, the conversation is really, really good and really, really enlightening for that person as well as me. And just an opportunity to build deeper relationships with people as well. So when we look at it from a coach's standpoint, and how can we actually put this on paper? To me, it would just be, in your consultations, actually start talking to people about these things. Really start to identify, what is this whole thing about? Okay. In fitness, outside of fitness, so on and so forth. And maybe just write that down and do little check-ins, whether it's, scheduled or not. Do check-ins with these people and just ask questions and make sure that you're continuing to nudge them forward.